heard before. We all know Oprah's story, and a woman has a big life. That woman has a big life, but there are only so many stories that could be told about that. I'm sure there are some private ones that none of us will ever know, but the ones that are made public and are for our consumption, she talks about how at each moment she knew it was time to move in her career, and in each moment she knew it was time to move on from friendships or relationships, or when she had to deal with a staff member that was being insubordinate and it was uncomfortable, or when she went to war, even though she didn't mean to, with Big Beef in Texas because she said something, she had a show about not eating meat, and they said that she was personally attacking their industry because her brand was so powerful at that time that she was an influencer, and she always was. I mean, who doesn't know about Oprah's favorite things? We tuned in for that. We all wanted to get something for free. Yay, Oprah, me, you get a car. Oprah's an influencer. She's a changer. She's a gifter. So she had that battle. And that's actually when we saw Dr. Phil come on the scene. And he was a life coach and a therapist that helped her. I'd say more of a therapist. He was actually a therapist, but his energy felt life coachy to me. I'll talk to you about that in another show. But in any case, he helped her walk through a lot of the lessons and to realize a lot of the lessons that were happening in that. And she picked him because he was a Texan. She needed someone that understood the mentality to get through that case, and she did. But my point is that she spoke about this to us, and she said that you have to know when it's time to go or stay. She sang the Kenny Rogers song, know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, know when to run. You know Oprah loves to sing in her sing-songy voice, and it was wonderful, but it really drove the point home to me. You have to know when to walk away, and you have to know when to run. At this conference, Deepak Chopra was in attendance, so was Ian LaVanzant of Ian La Fix My Life, and so was Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Love, Pray. So there was some, and a couple other people, but those were my faves, so that's what I remember. But there was a few other pastors and pretty known people. But some of the lessons that they taught also kind of dovetail into the Dao of Oprah, especially Deepak Chopra, beautiful sunrise meditation with him, where he was really asking us to know when it's time to move. And so I thought it would be good to mention that so that you understood that that was a theming that was going on, but that's been the theming that's been going on in Oprah's life. And if you're wondering and have a crossroads in your life, it is something that you can use to help you get through. But in order to do it, you have to get still. You have to not have a lot of noise around you, she advised, because the noise distracts you from your calling and your purpose and the truth of when it's time to move. She talks about money, which we all know Oprah for, and I've already mentioned it a couple times in these first few minutes. But she was very excited with her best friend Gail, she said, and she said, I know that I will never make more than $20,000. I'm in my 20s and I'm making 20-something thousand. It can't get better than that. And Gail said, oh my gosh, Oprah, in your 30s, what if you made $30,000? And they squealed together, and we all laughed, out loud, because it's hilarious that Oprah was excited over $30,000. That just proves that she's human, and she definitely had some of our experiences. But she was laughing about it because she thought, oh my gosh, that's insane. And her father said to her when she had the opportunity to move to another place for a job, Oprah Gail, that's her name. Oprah Gail, you better not move because you're not going to make any more than that. And when Oprah was born, she talks about being born in an apartheid South, and she was born 5 years after they allowed desegregation. Had she not been born in that exact moment, her life may not have been able to be what it was. Not that it was easy then, but she had opportunities at the very least. And her grandmother, this haunted me, she played a beautiful scene of clothes hanging in a line. Whoever hung clothes up in a line, do you guys remember that? I had to do that. So she played the scene of her grandmother talking to her, and it's not an actual home video, but just like a reenactment of her grandmother talking to her. And Oprah's a little 4 or 5-year-old, and her grandmother's hanging out these clothes, and she was a maid for the white people in her town, and she said these were good white people, and they were really good to her. And they took care of her, and they were loving, and they didn't beat her or abuse her. This is her grandmother's estimation of, making it. She has a good white family that she works for. And Oprah says that her grandmother was flicking those clothes, the sheets, making that sound and whipping it in the wind and putting it on the line, and said, now, Oprah Gail, you pay attention, because one day You're going to have to know how to do this, and I want you to do it as good as me so that you can work for a good white family just like I do. And Oprah said to herself in that moment, she said it was a moment of providence, and she said, I said to myself, I will not do what you do, Grandma. Not that she had disdain for her grandmother. Her grandmother was loving, encouraged her love of words, made her speak in front of the church, helped to plant the seeds of the Oprah that we see today. However, that was the limited view that her grandmother had, and that was the limited view that even her best friend Gail had. 30,000 at 30, Oprah, you're living the dream. And that was the limited view that her father had. Don't you leave that safety and security of that job, girl. How many of you have had people say things like that to you, and they mean full well that they love you and they care about you and they're excited for you because they think you've reached some level of success that you could never top, not because they don't believe in you, not because they don't believe in your power or your dream, but because they don't know that you hold a vision for yourself that's bigger. And if you listen to those voices, you will stagnate yourself, I have found in my journey. And it is important to be still so that you can hear it is time to go. Thank you for the lessons, and you move on. I think that that's a very powerful number one because it speaks to the fact that we can be influenced or influencers. And it speaks to the fact that everyone is fallible and has a moment where they feel a little weak and they want to take the good advice of someone they love and care about, that loves and cares about them. But you can get lost and off your track in that. So it's important to know when it's right for you to move to the next level. Lesson number one. Number two, check with yourself to ensure you're not used to fulfill somebody else's agenda. This is really interesting. She especially talks about not being used to fill somebody else's agenda on your platform, because at this time she was the Oprah's on Oprah and she had a platform. She tells a story about having actual KKK members on. She tells a couple of stories about this, so I want to talk about this. That didn't involve that, but having some KKK members on, and they were making signals to each other back and forth, and she said she was so frustrated because she knew in that moment that they were going to use it for propaganda, for further recruitment. And she knew it in her spirit. She didn't have any confirmation, and she went back to her producers, and she said, I will not ever do that again. I did not feel good in that moment. I was angry. They were angry. We didn't get anything done. Now, this is in the late 80s, okay? 89, I believe, is when it happened. And so this kind of TV was very popular. We had Jerry Springer and Donahue. And think about what was on TV. Geraldo with the chair throwing and his issues with the KKK members. So there was a lot of violence on these talk shows, and it was very confrontational. But she said, I will not do it. Now, she fast forwards in the story. She says many years later, the last year of the Oprah show, that she had those same KKK members back, and they said to her, and they confirmed what she knew in her spirit in that moment, was that they used that video for recruitment. They said, listen, this is us on the Oprah show. This is what you can do. It was like recruiting someone for the Army. They used it for recruitment purposes, so it validated what she thought, but it changed the way that she comported herself as a talk show host, because in that moment she started to understand you have to know what your intention is, and you cannot just go into the world if you have a platform allowing somebody else to use you to fulfill their agenda. So take hold of whatever it is. Whether your platform is you're the greeter at Walmart, make sure that your energy is what you're bringing and that no one else is swaying you or influencing you or going to use you via that platform to create a different narrative for themselves. And in this world today and how quickly things move, it's very easy to do that, to have someone else use your platform. You need to be in total control of it. You need to get a hold of yourself and understand that you have the power to turn the tides, but also to be in control of your narrative. Be in control of your narrative. Number 3, understand when you are entering a space of egoic delusion. I love this part because I think that as any creative or anybody, forget about being a creative, we all can enter into spaces of egoic delusion. It's the human condition to be tapped into that id, to be too deep into our ego, to be too identified with self. Yes, I'm asking you to pay attention to yourself. So you say, Monette, what's the difference? Should I be paying attention or not? here's the thing. Sometimes we get a little delusional, and that's what I want you to hear. And this is how Oprah explained it. She really thought that she was above the fray in the 90s in regards to confrontational television, because she was doing enlightened stuff. She made that shift in the late 80s away from that KKK show, and she thought, I am doing God's work. She really started to get full of herself, is what she said. And she said that I'm not having people wrestle and carry on like on Jerry Springer. Jerry, who doesn't remember Jerry Springer? But she was still doing confrontational television in the reality of things. And she said she had a man come on with his wife and his girlfriend. And she said, okay, fine, you want to come on and talk about this thing? And the wife was sitting there, and he's in the center, and his girlfriend's on the left, and the wife's on the right. And he announces to the world that his wife and the world that his girlfriend is pregnant. And Oprah said she looked into the wife's face, and she felt her shame. She felt the humiliation of that woman. And she said she would never do this again. And she said in that moment she had to shift her life. In that moment she said, let's think about, to her producers, what we want to say to the world. We will not be doing this TV. Now, see, here's a story here. She thought she was doing good because she was doing all these like really granola shows, Live Your Best Life. She had Bob Harper on and all these people that were exercising and doing all of that. And she just thought, I'm doing God's work. But what she was really doing was wrapped up. It was the same thing that everybody else was doing, but it just had like a prettier package on it. And she got over herself and got out of her delusion and realized, whoa, I'm not doing what I think I'm doing. I just humiliated someone on TV for ratings, and I will never do it again. And that's how she began to evolve. So shift and understand when you might be a little bit into yourself and having some egoic delusion. I thought that was a really important lesson for any human. Sometimes we got to see the bigger perspective and see the truth of the situation. Number 4 is to fully think about what your intention is. Now, she said to those producers, I want to think about what we say to the world. So that goes perfectly into thinking about what your intention is for doing what you're doing. She wanted to raise vibrations, and she didn't understand what that meant, but she knew that it didn't mean humiliating women on a national platform. So ask yourself your why. That's what I would recommend. Ask yourself your why. Because if your why is motivated by ego, meaning I want more money, I want to be famous, I want to be this, I want to be, I want to have all the gold medals because my name is Michael Phelps and I think I should. I don't think that's his reason at all. But if there's a drive inside of a Michael Phelps or a Serena Williams or any of these great athletes that we look up to, it's bigger than the medals, it's bigger than the money. They're pushing themselves for excellence. And in your platform, if it's your office or, like I said, if you're a business owner, you can ask your why. Every business begins with a mission statement. What is your reason for even existing? From the smallest app company to Facebook to the largest conglomerates, somewhere in their books, you can find a 2-sentence, if even 2 sentences, maybe 1-sentence mission statement. Everyone needs to have a mission statement. You need to know your why for going through the world. And if you have a platform on any level, you need to know your why. Because sometimes money's not there, fame, notoriety, numbers, viewers, it's not there. But you have to keep going. Some of your favorite YouTubers started out with 3 views, and they kept pushing, and now they have millions of views. But their why wasn't, I want to have just 1 million views. They might have had a goal, but they had to have a passion to drive that intention in order to go forward, especially when it wasn't looking like it was going to show up. So you have to know what your intention is for doing something. Number 5, Oprah lives by the 3rd law of motion in physics. This is her mantra, which is for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. She says she lives by the premise that everything she puts out will come back to her in a circular motion like gravity. And she pays attention to what propels that action into the intention. So she doesn't do anything without being fully clear about why she intends to do it. It's important, guys, to be grounded in yourself, to keep your feet on the ground no matter how many shoes you can buy, she says. She says she does her daily work to take care of yourself. She says it's important to know, what do you do to uplift your spiritual energy. And this one, I also resonate.